Everyone, welcome to the webinar today, hosted by Inspire Action for Social Change. It's lovely to be with you all. Today, we are recording the webinar as usual so that we can post it on our website along with the slide deck so that you all have access to that after today. And so we continue to want to support you as much as possible. We'll continue to post as many things, but we also wanted to remind you to reach out for anything that you might need. Today, we're going to take up working with parents who use violence when providing remote supervised visitation and exchange service. So that's what we're going to do today. Jen is going to be the heavy lifter of our webinar today and do content with you. So let's hand it over to you.
Great. And Rita, would you put the slides up?
Oh, can you not see?
Mm-mm.
It's sharing.
I see a lovely coast, rocky coast with water.
Really?
I mean,
Beth, is that what you see too?
Yeah.
And if that's what everyone else sees, just take a moment.
Okay, yeah, 1 second. Let me stop sharing and then I'll start again.
Okay. Well, hi everybody. I'll take this moment just to say hello. So glad to be with you this afternoon for a little bit and to just spend some time thinking about our work with people who use violence during modified services. My still not working, Amrita?
I didn't do anything different.
Let me try. I have mine here. I have it up.
Why don't I do it, Jen? Because then
It's
great.
Okay. Sorry, everyone.
Yeah, sorry about that.
It's a day. We're just going to take a moment in our own vulnerability and share, at least I will from my perspective. You know, some days have not felt hard. Today feels like one of those harder days. And showing up and doing the best we can, being loving and gentle with each other and ourselves. And I'm glad we have some of our folks from Hawaii who joined us too. We can't see you, or hear you right now, just so you know, Jenna. So this is just an opportunity to listen, and I'll actually be with you all at 3 o'clock, well, my time, to chat some more.
All right. Is that working for y'all?
Yeah, it's just at the end of the deck.
Yeah. Sorry about that. I don't know what happened.
All right. Perfect.
Yeah.
Thanks, Beth.
Thanks, Beth.
Let that everyone?
Beth to the rescue.
No. Okay. Now let's get to where we need you all. Awesome. Ready? We'll skip.
A little moment here. I could use this probably as much as all of you. Just take a second, soften your forehead and clench your jaw, relax your shoulders. And this is just a reminder about holding the tension in our bodies.
Do that.
I was like, are you done with that?
I'm so sorry. I don't know why.
All right, here we go. So just a moment of reflection and breathing for ourselves. Just encourage folks, everyone just take a moment to think about where you hold your attention in your body. Where are you holding it now? Have you noticed new places over the last so many weeks? Notice it. Try to breathe into it. And then just for our own reminders to have on a sticky or somewhere close by, just a note about what are 2 or 3 things that you can do to help soothe or release this tension when you start to feel it, when you feel it getting in your way, or when it's telling you to pause. Just take a moment to jot down a couple things for yourselves. All right. Thanks everyone for taking a moment for that. I hope that at some point of a day, you find that sticky and it's a helpful reminder from you to yourself about things you can do to take care of yourself, to notice your body, to let go of some of the tension, and to not forget to breathe as deeply as you can. It's always good to take a breath as we also start to move into talking about working with people who use violence. So let's move on in. We thought it was important for us to take some time to really think about our work with people who use violence, what this means during these modified services, all of the things that stay the same, but we're in a different moment and circumstance. And so just some reminders, some strategies, some things that we can do to continue to support the safety of survivors and children. And to remember that, you know, the more we can figure out ways to connect with people who use violence right now, we are supporting not only the immediate safety and healing of survivors and children, but for people who use violence as well. And so just want to take some time to kind of try to think about this work, think about it in this moment, struggle together a little bit about how we continue to hold this balance. And so just to start, especially for those of you who have been with us, again, we just want to keep reminding that we're still providing the same services, the same guiding principles apply, our still role and function is the same. And we can't help but also take a moment to recognize that in these different circumstances and conditions, how do we modify, think about our work and our services a little bit different to adapt to what people need now that might be different, right? However, these things are still the same, right? Connection is key, and we'll spend some more time talking about that over this hour together, but the more we can connect with parents, the more we can connect with children, even if it's just to keep them informed, even if it's just to listen and to be there to support them just in this hard time. This connection is what is going to help not only the families we're working with now, but as we hopefully get back to a different normal where we're sitting in the room with families and being with families, this connection will have a long-term impact in our ability to continue to do our work in the ways we're doing it. Leading with care and compassion is more important than ever. Recognizing that no one is their best self right now. We are all doing the very best we can, trying to navigate and manage changing times, more stressors. And so for us to just remember, how do we come into every conversation, every interaction from a place of compassion, recognizing that folks are struggling and that we're struggling too. And so how are we paying attention to that and really having this be sort of the way we come forward, the way we engage and start and recognize there's some things we're going to have to do, but that we always want to start from this place. Acknowledging humanity and unique life circumstances. This is also a good reminder that everybody's experiencing this pandemic. However, people are experiencing it very differently. And depending on the community and the current impact of the virus in communities, resources, all of those kinds of things are really important for us to be paying attention to. Again, always recognizing our own power and privilege, where other folks are coming from, considering access issues, all of the kinds of things that we want to be really responsive, but taking that pause and recognizing that some people may need different things and not everyone's going to have the resources necessary to jump right in. So how are we supporting people? Safety is first, of course. We're always going to start from a point of how are we supporting the safety of survivor parents and their kids. That is our purpose. That is why we exist first and foremost. So that continues to have to be a guiding force in our work. And then, counteracting the experience and tactics of intimate partner violence. This is going to be new. We're going to learn this together, how to do this remotely, how to engage from a different place. I've been sitting on a lot of calls, folks who are trying to figure out intervention programs remotely, and folks who primarily work with people who use violence. And there's a real range of responses, but there is a general sentiment that we all need to kind of first and foremost come from a place of compassion, a place of understanding, and that will be a leading strategy for us in our ability to also hold people responsible and navigate the potential harm that some will continue to cause during this time. Beth, will you switch it? So, we're always trying to hold this balance. And so we were trying to think of some messages and things that we might hear, and how do we balance these in a way that holds compassion but doesn't lose responsibility is really important. And so, it's always the and. We talk a lot about the and, right? It's not either or. And so these messages we want to think about, and I just want to acknowledge these messages aren't meant to be used in the same sentence per se, but that within the same conversation or engagement, we want to be holding these to be true, right? So, I understand you're stressed, and that's where we want to lead. That's where we want to start. That's kind of our launch pad to sort of beginning and connecting, right? And we want to also recognize that the pandemic doesn't justify abuse. It doesn't make it okay. It's not an excuse, right? So we want to be able to hold these messages of care and compassion and responsibility. And again, I just want to echo, it's not meant to be said in this way to a person specifically, but for us, as we're thinking about our work, right, it's the balance. We have to understand the stress, and we also recognize that it's not an excuse, right? And so how are we supporting people from that place? Again, I hear you miss your children. And remember that abuse hurts them. And for us in particular, we are working with people who use violence around their relationships with their kids, and some who are not going to see them, or some who are used to an hour visit may only get, 5 or 10 minutes to see their child for a blip, or even a phone conversation, right? So how do we hold that? That must be painful. That must be difficult, right? And when necessary, right, in those moments, the ways in which people use violence may misuse the situation, make it more difficult, use power and control. We also are here to counteract, right, and remind them of the impact that their behavior and their choices have on their children, that they'll have now and that they'll have in the future. And again, this idea of we all feel powerless right now, and trying to control your family is harmful, right? And how do we, again, hold this balance and find the humanity and find our connection? This is a moment, for those of you who have been with us, we do that exercise and immersion of similarities and differences. This is a moment where each and every one of us is having to experience this pandemic, right? And feel powerless and sometimes out of control of aspects of our lives, right? So how do we find that place of connection, that sort of unity, right? And we're all going through this, and you can make other choices about how you navigate it and make it as okay as you possibly can for you and your family. So this is just the reminder, right, that we always want to hold survivors and kids at the center of our thinking. I have my hand here. It's as if they're on our shoulder, as their experiences, what we know, what we've learned. For those of you who called in last Wednesday, we started with talking about our work with survivors because we want them to help lead. We want to be led by their choices, what they need, what they think will keep them safe. And so in our engagement with people who use violence, we want to come from a place of care and compassion, and we don't want to lose sight of why folks are using our services in the first place. And so when we we center survivors and kids, when we remember their experiences, when we let them lead, more often than not, we will make choices that are responsive and make sense in families' lives, and hold us and ourselves and each other, responsible for not colluding, for not losing sight of that role of responsibility and interacting and intervening when we have to. Beth. So some places to start, I think, for all of us, right? And here's even just a sample script. I know some of us are trying to figure out like what to say, or how do we say it, and how do we work with folks in these moments. And fortunately, there's a lot of people out there who are helping craft language and helping us think about it. But I think a place to start with all our interactions, right, is how can we normalize the high stress families are feeling right now, right? How do we help folks know that they're not alone, that we're all in this together, right? We can say something like, it's completely okay and normal to feel powerless and insecure and out of control, right? Many of us do. To be afraid of the virus, that's okay, that's normal. That is a normal response to this circumstance that none of us have experienced or been through. To acknowledge that these conditions that many of us are living in, and we know that some families are still living in the same home. And some families are living in small spaces and are used to having kids gone all day and come home and go to work, but now everyone's in this small space, right? So acknowledging those kinds of things, maybe not making assumptions, but asking, how is it at home? What feels easy? What feels hard? Or a lot of people are alone right now. A lot of folks are living alone in apartments with limited access to resources, to support, to connections. If folks don't have the privilege of a computer or a smartphone or all of those kinds of things, recognizing sort of the stress of that and the shared experience of many who are having that. And the worry about your health, about your family's health, about your finances. So many people have lost jobs. Many people are on the front lines trying to do this work, they're working in hospitals, or they're working in grocery stores, or they're in delivery, or they're essential services in their communities. And that is stressful and brings a lot. And so the more we can kind of talk about these things and normalize them and help people feel that they are not alone. And to remember that in these moments too, it's easy to try to blame others, right? Especially if we're not talking about it, especially if we're not understanding it in this larger sort of collective consciousness. So giving people space for that. And creating space for parents to share their emotions. People are mad, people are afraid, people have lots of things going on for them. And sometimes, and we all know this, we are one of the few resources in families' lives, the few people who they share what's going on for them, what they're experiencing. For many of the parents who are using violence, who may be alone and don't have a lot of support or other people in their lives, they're not seeing their kids right now. If we can provide an opportunity for them to share their real feelings, what's happening for them, for us to, I'm not saying that it's okay for people to yell and scream at us or be abusive or any of those kinds of things, but there's a difference between being abusive and being willing to open a space for people to have whatever feelings they might be having. And so again, this always brings up our own self-reflection work, our own sense of who we are, what we feel comfortable with. This also makes me think about those moments where we have to know where we're at too. And all of us are also going through this. So know where you're at, know if you have the space and capacity in your head and your heart to hold someone's big feelings. If you don't, ask for support. But this is a really important way that we can support, in particular, parents who use violence in this moment, because they may not have anyone else. And if they have a place to share and be open and to let out some of their fears and concerns and frustrations, again, we can help mitigate, hopefully, their desire or their desire to go to their partners and their families in ways that could cause greater harm. Yes. So this is an important time more than ever for us to use our relationship use the relationship that we have spent time building with parents who use violence. Lean into that. Consider the times where you've had opportunities where you've had to intervene or connect in these deeper, sometimes more difficult ways. Build on the trust that already exists, you know. This is a time for us to continue to connect with the families who we have relationships with, so that that trust is a place where we can start to sort of build from rather than starting over in these moments. And I think reaching out to parents. I know many of you have shared with us all of the amazing things you're doing, right? That you're reaching out, you're setting up check-ins. We have to be willing to offer support and sometimes just be willing to listen. And the more proactive we can be with parents who've used violence in particular to help mitigate the anxiety, their sense of like feeling out of control and disconnected, or being, you know, all of the ways they may interpret what's happening. We know that parents who use violence often will see themselves as victims. And so the more we can reach out to make those connections, to offer ourselves up for support and be willing to listen, again, this is a key piece to our support for survivors and children. And I believe wholeheartedly too, it will have a lasting impact in our ability to continue to have these strong relationships with parents who use violence, which, you know, our end goal of supporting families on a path of healing. This will have an impact in their trust in the future, in their seeing us not just as, you know, a part of the system, but as a resource and people who care about them and are going to be here to support them, to bring their better selves, to hopefully make behavior change and move on a journey that is more full of healing than it is the pain that many of them have felt in the past. Next. We know parenthood is an essential tool for us, positive parenthood. How are we engaging around their relationship to their child? And I think this is going to be a little bit tricky for us now too, because for folks who aren't getting to see their kids, you know, we want to explore how they're feeling about their child. We need to make space for just the missing of their child and the frustrations they feel. This is a good time to, before we hop on the phone, to remember all of the moments that we've had with this parent, some more than some less, right? Where they've really demonstrated their strengths, their love for their child, so that we can not necessarily have scripted lines, but we can have real stories of where we've seen them shine with their kids, where we've seen them show their love and care for their children, and really use that as a place to connect, as a place to help them, you know, hopefully make good choices right now about just navigating this time in the best way possible. And those stories are things they can hold on to. Those are the seeds, that's the experiences they can hold in their hearts as they navigate this time, sometimes without seeing their child or seeing them, you know, less frequently or in much smaller bite sizes than they did before the pandemic. And I think this idea, and you know, it's funny, I struggled with this idea, and this is going to be okay for some parents and not for others, right? But like, how can parents who are alone have ways to bring their child into their life, right? Like, is it a story their child wrote, or is there a picture that they have, or is there something? And for some parents, this could get misused somehow. But for some parents, helping them think about, well, they can't be with their kids now. How do they create a space for their kids in their house with a picture or a toy that's still at their house, or some way for them to like create a way to feel connected to their kids, I think can be a powerful tool. And again, not for all, but for some. And you'll want to navigate that with the parents that you know can consider something like that could be helpful rather than harmful. You go back one, Beth. So this is true for all of us, and probably even more true for people who use violence right now, who may be very isolated, who may be alone, who may be just sort of in their own like stewing self, right? Explore natural supports. Who are their social connections? You know, having them think about who they can reach out to get support. We sort of have this idea of like, who's their go-to list? Like who, sit with them and say, like, who are the people who, when it gets hard or you're feeling frustrated or you're having feelings or you feel like you're going to do something you're going to regret, right? Who are the people who you can reach out to and say, hey, will you be my person when I need support? And have them have that at the ready. They can write down the phone number or the email or however it is they might connect with that person. But giving folks a chance to think ahead about when they need someone, who can they go to? And is there a way they can reach out to that person in advance and let them know that they are going to be someone they're going to lean on during this time? And, explore who they trust, and to be also proactive about reaching out. Who might that be? Could it be a friend, a family member, a pastor, someone in the community, someone who's part of their cultural community? How can they sort of think ahead to sort of build some cushion for themselves, right? So they're not just like going to the person when they've snapped, but that they're sort of taking initiative now to sort of have connections, to share time with people, to be connected to the people who they trust, so that they are getting some of those needs met, they're feeling connected. Because it's when people feel disconnected, when they feel alone, when they feel left out, when they feel like they don't have anyone, that people get desperate. So how do we help people plan for when they need, and like they're in an emergency and they need somebody, but how can they plan even further ahead to make time to connect with people who make them feel good about themselves, who they feel connected to, who are good for them, so they can make that time up front rather than having to fall back. Ask parents about their coping strategies. So what do you do? What do you do when things are hard? How do you release your energy? What do you do when you feel tense? What are some things that, start with them, obviously, and most people have some things in their back pocket. Some people have more or less, but if you start with sort of asking folks for what they have and then taking time to maybe offer some up, right? Overwhelmingly, this is what the scientists say, this is what we hear from everyone, like vitamin D is so important right now. Get outside, soak up how you can in the safest way possible, some fresh air, move your body however you can. Some people can move their body in more accessible ways than others. So whatever that means for that parent, how can they do things that move things around, right? We store our trauma and our tension in our bodies. And so when it just sits there, it can get stuck and it can make us not feel good. It can make us more aggravated, shorter fuse, right? So we're figuring out how to breathe fresh air and move things through our bodies in more intentional ways. It is, and many of us know, it just makes us feel better, right? Lean into cultural supports and cultural strengths that are supportive, right? So where do they get their strength? Where do they get their courage? Who do they lean into? Who do they get support from? Again, this idea of connecting with people they can talk to and trust. Spend some time having them think about their strengths, right? What are the things that they've done in the past that have worked and have been helpful? What are things they feel good about themselves? And trying to continue to build and cultivate that in ways that are valuable. And then again, thinking about what we're calling an emergency plan. So if they find themselves building resentment, getting angry, wanting to make choices that they know are going to get them in trouble or are going to cause harm to their kids in ways they don't want to cause harm to their kids, have them create an emergency plan, not just who they're going to call, but what are things they can do? What are the things they can do that are safe, that take care of them, and that help them de-escalate in ways that they can bring themselves down and be able to have a clearer mind and make clearer choices. We all know when we have a plan and we have it written down or we have it in our hearts, we are more likely to use it. So this is something we can work with people around, to think about, okay, when it gets bad, when you get to this place where you're feeling you might do something you don't want to do, let's make a plan. What might that look like? Who might be the people that you can rely on? What might be the activity you can do that is a good release that is good for you. And it can be anything, right? It can be going out for a run. It could be closing your eyes and taking a nap. It can be taking a deep breath. It can be calling up a friend. It can be artwork. It could be turning on the TV and watching a funny movie. Just whatever it is that this person can do that they feel will help them settle in, take some time. Whatever we can offer up for folks will be helpful to them. And we think about these things maybe more naturally. And when you're in stress and trauma and you're in crisis, it is harder to think about these things. So if it's just a sticky that they have or a piece of paper they can turn to, hopefully they'll be more likely to use it at these times that they really need. So provide a warm referral. Again, we know our role is, is advocacy for survivors and children, but providing a referral, providing access to resources can be such an amazing trust building thing for us, and in particular with parents who use violence. And we talk about this in our normal work, and even more important now. So what do we know about what's available? What do we know about what people need? What are people's concerns so that we can connect them to the resources that might be helpful? What are the crisis lines in our communities right now? What are the lines that people can call for parenting support, suicide hotlines, folks who have questions about their health? I mean, so many people, I can only imagine how often WebMD is Googled right now, even though the CDC is the place to go. But people, feel a scratch in their throat or shortness of whatever it might be, and people are panicked and want information. So the more at the ready that information is, the more calm people can be to reach out and call and get it. I think about online resources. I know right now they don't exist, but I know there's a lot of folks nationally right now trying to think about some resources, some national resources for men in particular and people who use violence. But even just, there's so much online right now for help and support or things to do that we might want to figure out what are some resources we might want to provide or see what folks are using in order to get them some support. I am going to take a pause here. And Vinique, I've noticed that your hand is up, and I'm wondering if there's something you wanted to say. So I'm going to open you up for just a minute and see if there was something you wanted to share. And maybe you just accidentally raised your hand.
Vinique, you're also muted, so you might need to unmute yourself if you are talking.
All right. If you decide you want to chime in, just chat in the chat box in the Q&A and we'll get to you. All right. So I'm going to shift into a few more practical things related to providing visits to people who use violence, remote visits. So some places to start, and a lot of this isn't different than the things that we have been talking about for regular visitation and exchange services. Some of it's just to kind of a reminder and to realize, and we were talking about this earlier today, when we have values that guide our work, right? Or guiding principles or certain strategies or approaches that, are the guideposts, right? That we go to, that we lean on when we're trying to make a decision or we're creating a new policy or needing to intervene, right? So I just encourage us all to remember what those are, right? Because they will help us in such important ways during this time to navigate, to think about our work. We often say in supervised visitation, and we've all chuckled about this, right? We can't make this stuff up. It's a webinar, I won't swear. And things happen. You all reach out to us with these crazy things that come up. And, well, a pandemic has not been one. It is something that we can all turn to these principles and values and strategies to use to help us respond, right? So again, starting with parents' hopes and fears, getting to know who parents are. What are they afraid of as it relates to doing visitation in this different way? What are their concerns? Understanding what's important, right? Understanding what's important about whatever amount of time they might have with their kids. So that one, we're not making assumptions. Two, we can help navigate, whether it's getting in front of potential issues that we know are going to come up, or problem solving around how to make some things happen. That could be, how they're going to spend their time together, what they might do, their concerns, those types of things, right? So again, we've said this in other webinars, but just re-emphasizing the importance of reorienting families right now to how we're going to be changing up our services if we're changing them up and doing remote, making sure we're scheduling check-ins, time to connect, all of those kinds of things. Exploring how parents want to spend time with their children. And some may have no idea. I think we're all sort of learning this as we're going too, and our list keeps growing as we're trying things and we're thinking about it. But exploring with parents what it is they want to do with their kids, and then being available to help them plan for that and think about it and what's realistic and what's not. And we'll have connected with survivors and kids too, so we'll have an idea of where they're at. So taking time to really think this through with parents to try to create, as successful a time as possible, right? Again, remembering that our job isn't to make visits happen, it's to ensure if they happen safely, and that the more planning we can do, the more strategizing, the more smoothly things will go for everybody as we're all navigating these really uncharted waters. Try to support the sanctity of the visiting parent's child alone time. This is going to be challenging. I think this is something, and I know it came up yesterday on the call too, this idea of how can we support parents to really have this time, knowing that, with young kids, they're going to be navigating technology and figuring things out, that often the survivor parent isn't right there necessarily, or sometimes we're going to have survivor parents as the visiting parent, and what we know is the parent who's caused harm is going to be the one with the custody, who's going to maybe be trying to listen in or do other things. So how do we plan for that? How do we support survivors and recommend ideas of either having a friend to check in with if they want, or another staff person available to be on the phone, or if they're connected to an advocate. Thinking ahead about how that can all work. Again, this idea of really walking this through as we would a visit, even though it's remote, having our normal check-ins, having the handoffs in the ways that we have them during visitation when it's in person, and really thinking this through with the other parent, and not making any promises that we can't keep, because unfortunately there may be a lot that we can't control, and so we want to be mindful of that, to do our best to think it through, to try to create what we can for this parent to have, what may only be 5 minutes of time with their kids a week. But again, just recognizing that it is more complex. We don't want to make promises that we can't keep, but we can work with everyone in the family to try to figure out how to make this happen in the best way possible. And of course, we want to plan for how, if we have to intervene, we're going to intervene. So really talking that through, letting parents know that if we need to, we will mute or we will end the call. There are different things that we can do in the moment to support safety, and that we stay anchored in, the reason we exist and the types of things that we're going to need to do, and that the more we can plan ahead, the more successful those things will be. And of course, we want them to be in partnership with this parent if possible. And of course, there may be times that we're going to have to do whatever we need to do to keep everybody safe. Next. So we also want to spend just a few minutes thinking about and talking about strategies for supporting people who cause harm, when visits can't happen. And, this is a place where, as much as we can hold sort of compassion and understanding, how hard it would be, because what we know about most parents who visit their kids in supervised visitation, even when it's because of domestic violence, they do care deeply about their children. And so this idea of not seeing their children, not knowing how they're doing, not understanding, not knowing if they're okay, sort of the uncertainty and unpredictability can be really stressful, right? So how in this time for these parents can we be a support, right? It could be just a check-in. It could be just an opportunity to connect with them on a weekly basis, to see how they're doing, to keep them informed, to share information. I think those types of things really make a difference. And at least people know they're in the loop and that we're doing the best we can and that we're trying to figure this all out, and that not only is it uncharted for them, but it is for us, and we are really trying to navigate it in the best way possible. You know, for some, if it's safe, there may be other things that you can do. And these are things that we haven't historically done, right? We've stayed away from exchanging things like pictures or images or letters or all those kinds of things. For some families, and I know some of you are doing this, it may be safe. It may be safe, and if everyone's okay, the survivor parent, you know, to exchange, you know, have a child write a letter and share that with the other parent, or a drawing or something, some way for them to feel that they're getting that from their child, that they're feeling some sort of connection. There may be other creative things that you all may think about that you can talk with parents about. So again, you know, we never thought we would be sitting on calls talking about how to do remote visits the way that we're talking about them. And this may require in this moment some other ways that we temporarily modify or change some things in order to help parents feel connected to their kids. And recognizing that, well, it's for the parent who uses violence to feel connected to their kids, that the more ways we can help sort of navigate this moment. We know kids want to feel connected to their other parent. Most kids love and care about that parent. They probably are worried about them. They want to see them. They want the parent to know they're thinking about them. And most survivors want their kids to have some sort of connection to the parent and figure that out. So this will be something to navigate, to really think through with each family individually, certainly not to make any universals about this practice, but it may be a way to be helpful and to help support families during this time. Again, I just keep throwing it in here. As much as we can show compassion and understanding, deep listening and care can go a long way during these times, and being supportive. And last, we have to be transparent. So as transparent as we can be with parents, the ways in which we're having regular communication about what's happening, changing, what is possible, where we're going. It's when people will feel left in the dark and sort of disconnected that we're more likely to have escalations, or people, you know, doing things that they may not have done if they had some information or felt more connected or knew kind of where things may go in the near future. So our transparency, and I think we can really also help with our community partners to ensure that they are also posting information. Parents know what's available. I know in some communities they are doing virtual abuse intervention programs. Some communities are doing this better than others. I know one community in particular, I mean, they're sort of the gold standard in intervention programs, but they're offering free groups online. They're making themselves available. They're not making them mandatory. However, they can count. And some of these communities, I heard from a colleague of mine who have had good relationships with people who use violence, who have had this approach, they have like 80% participation rates of these people who've used violence showing up on these online platforms to do groups, to participate, they're engaged, they're talking. And it just really is starting to show that this balance of relational and systemic accountability and care and compassion in our work with people who use violence is making a difference, and helps people feel connected and want to continue to get the help and feel trusting of the providers and the support people out there who are offering opportunities for safer lives for survivors and kids, but also hopefully healing and change for people who are causing harm. Next.
I just have one thing that we wanted to also remind people of is that there are also families who are going to be referred perhaps to your programming, newly referred, you've never served them before, and you may not be able to adapt to remote services at this time. So we just wanted to also remind you that there are a lot of things that you can do to connect with them. Even if they've been referred and you can't provide service, that you can start with conversations. You can do many of these things to help them think through what support systems they have. You could be as transparent as possible during this time to let them know that you're trying and that they're not forgotten, that you're not ignoring them, and to continue to check in and let them know that you'll do that every once in a while so that they don't wonder whether their referral or their court order went into some mysterious abyss.
Thanks, Beth. So just some gentle reminders for all of us during this time, right? That it's difficult for all of us. So more humanity is more humanity. And we just encourage folks to bring yours, to see others, and to just be in it together. That clearly some people who use violence will use this time to abuse their families even further. And so we don't want to deny or negate or not hold that as true. And we've already seen it. I know there have already been some horrific things happening around the country. We know that there is an increase in domestic violence right now, and that these conditions and circumstances are the very igniters of escalation and ongoing abuse, right? So we know that that's true, and we also know that some won't, right? And so just a gentle, loving reminder that we also feel a little out of control right now, and as we navigate remote services, when we have less control over the situation and the circumstances, sometimes we can get more rigid and tight. And I just want us to check our battering tactic detective selves in these moments, and just take deep breaths, try to listen deeply and avoid assumptions, and to be paying attention to the ways that coercive control and harm and abuse can continue to happen. So more difficult than ever in a lot of ways, but more important as well. Next. Again, I just sort of said this, right? Job loss, health issues, financial stress, uncertainty. They don't cause abuse, we know that. However, they will create additional challenges for families and stressors and may exacerbate the situation. And supporting parents who use violence during this time supports the safety and healing of parents and children now and in the future. And I think the more we can take pause and remember that the work we're doing now, I think will be really impactful in the long term with the families who we serve. It is in these moments, the way people show up for us, the way people show their true selves, the ways in which we can be a bright light even in what feels like a really dark time. The way we cultivate relationships and maintain them and are there for people and show humanity. These are the things that will help people move through this with more resilience, and hopefully with a different way in which they connect later on when we resume some level of normalcy in the ways in which we sit with and are supporting families who are coming to our programs. So before we close too, and we will have a little time for questions. If folks have anything they want to bring up, we will do our best. And of course, our drop-in calls are a place to bring your questions, but this is our gentle permission slip to each of you as well. right? The work is hard. What you're doing is complex. You're being pushed to think way outside the box in lots of really important ways, and to hold your lives, your families, the families who you're working with at the program, your communities in such important ways. And so encourage folks, print this, share it. And the permission is to do nothing, to do something, to be unproductive, to do what makes you feel good or comfortable or calm or normal or safe or okay, to get through this in a way that works for you.
Thanks, Beth. Thanks, Jen. We have some reminders for you here. We have some upcoming webinars. Next Wednesday, we'll have Erin Fairchild with us, and we'll be discussing creative activities parents can do with their children during remote supervised visitation services. So please be sure to register for that. And then we will be having another new webinar on April 22nd and the 29th. Topics are still being determined. And so for further details, you can please go to our website, /inspireactionforsocialchange.org/COVID-19 SV support. And there you'll see all our recordings, the slides, any other additional information that we've been sharing. And then we will also be continuing with our drop-in support sessions. So we'll have them every Tuesday and Thursday throughout the month of April. And it's been really great to see everyone join, and we learned new things yesterday, things that we've thought about, but it's interesting to hear where everyone else is sort of in this process of virtual or remote visitation. And I would just personally like to say thank you everyone for sharing their courage, and I think that it really is helping inspire, create, and propel create materials for all of you, and it wouldn't be without all the work that all of you are doing. And lastly, please, you can call, text, email us, evenings and weekends included. Our information is up on the website. It's over here on the slides too. And yeah, Beth, Jen, anything else?
No, other than thank you for joining us. Thank you for being in partnership with us and supporting and connecting in an ongoing way. We're very appreciative of all of your good thinking and fast on your feet thinking that you're all sharing with each other. So we appreciate that.
Yes, thank you so much everybody for being with us and in this with us. We appreciate you all and look forward to being with you again soon.
We have a few minutes, so if anyone has any questions, please feel free to chat them in.
Go back to the permission slip too.
Also, if you think of questions, please join our drop-in session tomorrow at Thursday, 3 to 4 Central, 4 to 5 Eastern.
All right. Thank you so much, everybody. Pleasure being with you.
Thank you.
Oh, just a hello. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everybody.